You're listening to the Iterators of the Imperium.
Hi, I'm Mess, and I'm here with my lovely co-host Ryan, and you're listening to Season 4 of the Iterators of the Imperium podcast, the podcast in which Ryan is the expert on Warhammer 40K, and I am the noob trying to learn about the Warhammer universe. And yeah, let's get straight into it, Ryan. You have a word for me, right?
Are you trying to cheat, Maz?
I'm not trying to. Okay, just quick explanations is in order. Ryan and I have tried to record this episode before. We had some connection issues, which meant like 10 minutes into the recording, we had to like end it there. I might just spoil it then. We're talking about the Blood Angels, right?
No, we're not.
Wait, you told me that was the word, right?
No, Dark Angels.
Sorry, what did I say?
Blood Angels. You're just obsessed with Sanguinius, my dude.
I can't deny that. Confirm or deny. But the Dark Angels was what I meant to say. I remember. I mean, it was just yesterday or the day before that we talked about this, but still.
It's been a long 2 days, man. This time of year, every day is a really long day.
You too? I feel like that. I can relate, man.
Yeah,
hey.
I don't know why. It hits like the end of December and life just becomes so stressful.
Hey, leave a like if this is relatable, by the way. Hey, Happy New Year's, right?
Yeah, Happy New Year.
2024. Oh my god.
Yeah, this is going to be our first episode of 2024, and it's already had technical issues.
Nice.
Oh, God.
Right, you take the wheel, right, man?
Yeah, can we get Jesus to take the wheel? I feel like that'd be a better option at this point.
We need help.
Actually, so there is something I want to mention before we get into this episode, because we are going to be talking about the Dark Angels, for the record, right? That is, but I do want to mention something. So, the whole point of this season originally was going to be going at each of the legions individually, right? Because we did the Primarch, now we were going to do the legions. And then I realised that there's better ways to do that, and it's through, like, the storytelling aspect of it. And to be able to do that, we had to, like, get you up to speed to the modern day kind of stuff, so that we could just go straight through storylines for characters or certain groups or anything like that. Without you being too lost on what the hell was going on or why things were happening. So it changed a bit as we went. But it's now occurred to me that we don't need to discuss every legion in the modern day to be able to do that. Because, for example, the Ultramarines are not that different than they were back in the day. Like, they haven't had any, like, entire legion altering things that have, like, events that have went on, really. Obviously, Loss of the Primarch is going to change any legion, but all of them have had that, except for a couple of the Chaos ones, I guess. But yeah, like, for example, there are a couple of them, like the Ultramarines, which are pretty recognizable from 30k to 40k, whereas, like, if you looked at the Thousand Sons in 30k, whereas to now, you're like, what the hell happened to them? You know? So, because there's such a big difference between them, since, like, now there's only, like, 3% of the original guys are still alive, and the rest of them are, like, automatons in suits and stuff like that. Yeah, so, just, the point I'm trying to get at here is that, we may not end up looking at every single legion in this season before we end up moving on to kind of modern day stuff.
Yeah.
Just thought I'd let you know. Because we are getting through this season a bit.
We are. What episode is this at this point?
13, I think. 12.
Oh, bro, we have long seasons, by the way.
I know, right?
It's good though. It's fine.
Like 5 months at a time.
I think the listeners though and the viewers, because we are both live on Spotify and YouTube and everywhere pretty much at this point where you can listen to podcasts.
We're not live anywhere, for the record. We don't do this live. I want to make that clear.
We could do a special episode at some point.
I feel like we should at some point, yeah. I feel like that'd be cool.
Oh, and we could have like callers, like old radio shows. And I can have my stream deck like with sound effects for whenever people come in, wop wop wah, or yippee. That would be a good idea.
It's not a bad idea, actually, not at all. Oh, but without
We're
further
so
ado,
far away.
I know.
Yeah, sorry, I was about to say we're so far away from the episode right now.
Yeah, we are. Yeah, we're so far off track. So I'm going to try and drag us back to it, kicking and screaming. We're going to talk about the Dark Angels. This is their Legion banner, which is quite cool, actually. So, what do you remember about the Dark Angels? Anything in particular? Because we didn't really talk about the Dark Angels. We more talked about Lionel Johnson. So, what you would know about the Dark Angels is probably fairly limited.
I mean, I remember some of the trials to become one was pretty rough.
Yeah. So these guys were like
that last time.
Yeah, these guys were like old school, like medieval knights. That was like their way of living, and I'm pretty sure you talked about it being like Attack on Titan on their home world, because they just had these little like walled-in cities among the forest, and the forest was just full of monsters. So the only people who could go out were like the knights.
I mean, that is Attack on Titan. It's just
It
scouts.
is, yeah. Yeah, so it's quite old school medieval knight style. And when you got to the kind of like the deeper parts of it, of their legion, it looked quite secret society-ish. Like Knights Templar style secret society, like Da Vinci Code shit. It got quite like that, quite secretive and creepy and weird rituals and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so we are going to talk about them today because they have changed a lot from who they were during the 30th millennia to who they are now. They're nigh on unrecognizable in the change they've made. So we're going to discuss a few of the differences and why they exist between 30k and 40k for the Dark Angels. I believe I have some... Yeah, so this is like what a Dark Angel looks like. This is their their uniform, their armor and stuff, which is quite cool.
Yeah.
I like the robe over armor. That's always been quite a cool thing to me.
You go on.
I was gonna say it really does scream Knights Templar style shit to me.
I mean, it just looks very Warhammer-ish, if that makes sense, with a rope, kind of like Ryan's outfit right now. By the way, I just want to plug that real quick for the people who watches Ryan right now. He, tell them about your rope, Ryan.
Oh no, it's just cold as shit in my house, and my girlfriend got me an ultramarine robe, so I'm wearing that to keep myself warm. It's on brand.
You could just say it's because it's stylish, but yeah, he's
no, I'm definitely not stylish. I can rock a kilt though.
You can. I've seen pictures, by the way.
You have.
Hey, people contact me in private if you want. Okay.
Whoa, not those pictures. I think I have a couple more pictures of the Dark Angels. Yeah, like that's just cool as shit, isn't it?
That's kind of nice.
Yeah. There you go. There's one more, kind of similar to the first one. So yeah, this is what they kind of look like in the modern day. So there's a weird thing with these guys, right? It's a lot of the legions that have changed massively have either had change forced upon them, or it's been some kind of major accident. And these guys are kind of closer to the accident style, right? Because it's like one simple misunderstanding wrote their future in stone for the next 10 millennia. And it was not a bright future, I might add. It rarely is in 40k.
I mean, I've said this before. 40k, if you want to sum it down, it's just tales of survival.
It really is, yeah. So they, this legion went from being, the perfect example of what Space Marines were supposed to be back in, the 30th millennia to, this secretive society chasing down shadows through the darkest parts of the galaxy in the modern day. Yeah. It's a very big change. Also, for the record, they tend to kill, innocent people quite a lot because they have learned, secrets about these guys. So
Yeah.
it's not an honorable place to be for like a legion based off of like medieval knights, you know? They've really ended up on like the wrong side of their own history.
Yeah, you kind of want to tend to not do that, you know?
Yeah. So like we're gonna get into it properly, but personally, I feel that the Dark Angels
The
Fall
Dark
from
Angels.
Grace is one of like the greatest kind of like failings in 40k.
The
Because
greatest fail.
yeah, honestly, yeah, it's ridiculous how much they have fallen. So
Yeah.
to make something clear, right? Uh, have I ever mentioned to you the uncrowned princes?
That doesn't ring a bell now. So
Right, I
probably
might
not.
I might never have mentioned this, right? So this is like a theme that pops up a couple of times. It's so in the modern day it has popped up with the Primaris being introduced because the Primaris Marines didn't immediately get sent to the legion they belonged to. They were briefly one big army of a mixed troop, right? So you had Space Wolves, Ultramarine, White Scars, whatever, all fighting alongside each other as one big army of Primaris before they were gradually doled out to their own individual legions to bolster their numbers. And at this point, they were referred to as the Unnumbered Sons, right? This was Gilliman's way of handling it, right? To like get them into the field, make them useful, kick off his crusade with this like fresh army of tank ass Primaris Marines. But it's kind of a mimicry of what the Emperor did in a way. And the names actually sound familiar as well. Like they sound similar as well. Um, because when the first Space Marines were made, they were made in order, by the way. The legions were built in order. So the first ones that were made were Dark Angels, right? They were made based off of Lionel Johnson. But
Yeah.
at the same time that the Primarchs all got scattered across the galaxy, there was also a coup taking place in the Imperial Palace. An army with Thunder Warrior Primarchs and like a bunch of disgruntled humans attacked the palace. And the leader of the Custodies had to like swagger out in a blizzard to fight them. And that's the first time that the Space Marines, as they would come to be, ever set foot on a battlefield because the uncrowned princes, as they were called at the time, because the legions didn't have names yet because there were so few of them, they, as like prototypes of the first actual Space Marines, marched out into the snow with him and fought back that rebellion. But those that survived, which is obviously the vast majority of these like original Space Marines, just went on to become part of the Dark Angels Legion when they went out into the galaxy to start the Crusade. So
Yeah.
these guys are the first ever Space Marines. They are literally the example of what a Space Marine is supposed to be. You know? The exemplars of the host. Which I love
Yeah.
that title. I got that from back in the Blood Angels one. I've just kept saying it. It's an amazing title. So, yeah, originally there was an amount of them, I don't know how many exactly, were referred to as the Uncrowned Princes until there was enough that they became a legion and were eventually titled the Angels of Death. And then once Lionel Johnson got involved, he retitled them as the Dark Angels.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where this legion comes from. That's like their beginnings, right? That's a really honorable, really strong start. You can believe in that. That's cool, right? They've done well. And the other side to that is that because they were the first legion, they also were like the first ones to kick off the Great Crusade for the Emperor. They were out in the galaxy conquering planets before the other legions went out into the galaxy as well. And they had like
Yeah.
a fair bit of time that was just them doing it. So basically, according to the Dark Angels themselves, they like perfected every strategy that the other legions claim to be the best at. So For example, Horus's Legion used this tactic called the spear tip, where you would have like a vanguard fighting force punch through the enemy's defenses, and then the army would fight out from there. But obviously, they keep driving deeper and deeper, like a spear tip. So it breaks up the enemy lines and totally messes with their cohesion.
Yeah.
Horus was famous for this, right? This is like his legion was famous among all the other legions for this. The Dark Angels invented that strategy. Like Horus is just mimicking Dark Angel stuff. Like anything any legion claims that they are the best at, the Dark Angels did it first.
Oh god, it's like
Yeah.
Simpsons.
Yeah, kinda, yeah.
Or South Park.
What is that saying? Jack of all trades, but master in none, but still better than a master of one, right? The whole point of that is that every other legion might have picked one thing and specialized at it, like building defenses, or tearing down defenses, or punching
Yeah.
through enemy armies, or whatever, right? Or like, shock troop kind of attacks, whatever, right? Either way, though, that might be the one thing that legion is amazing at. But the Dark Angels are good at all of it. They invented this shit.
Hey, they they did it first.
That's exactly it. They did all of it first.
Yeah.
Very appropriate.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to explain that to give you an idea of what the Dark Angels are like, what they were like, right? For the record, though, they did not get credit for any of this, or like respect for any of this, because it was always said that Horus was the greatest warrior of all the Primarchs. Well,
Yeah.
I believe there's a point where someone says, except for possibly Mortarion, and I'm like, since when? Like, the Lion would obviously be the first contender if you're like, I think this guy's the toughest. Like, the next person in line is always going to be, but the Lion could probably take him. Maybe not nowadays because he's an old man, but like, in his
Back in
prime,
the day,
the Lion
yeah,
would have
back
had his
in-
way with any of them.
Lionel Johnson,
Yeah.
the man himself.
Yeah. But it's one of those things. They're past all the things they did. The fact that this is the case, that they did, found all of these strategies, it's kind of lost to history. Because, like I said, every legion believes that they invented what they do best. And in reality, they didn't, right? It's all been passed on. But they all think that they invented it, that their chapter, or their legion or chapter or whatever, it all comes just from them. They're just that great. And none of them realize that it's all Dark Angels, paved this way for us.
Yeah.
So I think it's pretty fair to say that they were in equal measures the Angels of Death and very much uncrowned princes, because they got no respect for what they did, but they were fucking good at it. So their names are very, very suited, but eventually they became the Dark Angels.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, obviously, back in the day, they were incredibly heroic, incredibly skilled warriors that had this, like, kind of knight aesthetic about them, old school order and knight style. That obviously is not the case anymore because of a few major events. So, obviously, like with any of these legions, the changes start at the end of the heresy, because the heresy is like the tying off point for most of this.
Yeah.
Yeah. It led to the galaxy being the way it is now. So a lot of the changes start right during or at the end of the heresy. So for all the Chaos Legions, it's usually when their Primarch turns, whereas for a lot of the Loyalist ones, it was actually like stuff that happened right at the end of the heresy. Or in the case of the Iron Hands, their Primarch getting beheaded. Which was kind of right at the start, to be fair.
Yeah.
So, do you remember how the heresy ends for these guys? Because we did talk about it in the Lionel Johnson episode. I think it was the first episode of season 3, so I'm not surprised if you don't have the details to mind.
I'm very quiet.
You are.
Because you're talking about the end of the heresy, right? When I don't know. Do I? because the thing is, right, especially with me, right, because I'm the noob, I get stuff confused and mixed for like one thing is the other,
Yeah.
and I can't remember if they slayed or if they got slain. You know, that kind of.
Okay, I'll give you a little brief rundown of like what happened. So at the end of the heresy, or towards the end of the heresy, I should say, right, there was a bit of a breakdown within the Dark Angels Legion. So one of the things with the Dark Angels is the Lion had like a best friend, a mentor, who he brought into the Legion with him when the Legions found him and were formed, based on their homeworld, Caliban. And this was Luther. And Luther became the Lion's second in command, and he was always second in command. But towards the end of the heresy, there was a bit of a breakdown among the Legion. So the Lion left like 10,000 troops on Caliban to defend it, to defend their homeworld, and left Luther to be in charge of them.
Yeah.
And then after the whole end of the heresy thing, the Lion returns to Caliban. But once his ship gets into orbit, the planet's defenses start firing on them. So the Lion starts firing back, thinking, I've left 10,000 troops here and Luther, and they've turned traitor. Fuck these guys. So he goes down to the planet and starts running through his own fortress, gutting his own troops and kicking ass, until he eventually finds Luther, and they get into this big epic battle because Luther has actually been taken over by Chaos.
Yeah.
And through a combination of the planetary bombardment from the Lion's fleet and the Chaos Gods getting pissed off when Luther gets like mortally wounded, the planet is destroyed, and with a, I think like the last thing that like actually destroys it is a warp storm from the angry Chaos Gods for Luther's failure to kill the Lion. And the troops that are on the planet at the time are cast through space and time, so they just start popping up randomly across the galaxy over the next God knows how many years. So that is kind of the Lion side of it. The whole thing ends with, as far as anyone really knows, Luther dies and the Lion disappears. His body is just gone. But the other side of it is Luther has turned traitor while the Lion's been away, and so have a bunch of the Marines that were there. But not all of them had turned traitor. So when the Lion gets into orbit, they start attacking, and then the Lion goes down to the planet and starts kicking ass. But you've got to remember that a lot of the Marines were traitors and were firing on their dad, trying to kill him, but the rest of them joined in because all they saw was their dad kicking down the door and then gutting all their friends. So all the Marines that were on the planet now thought, shit, the Lion's turned traitor. So even if they weren't traitors themselves, they were fighting in defense of themselves, thinking that their Primarch had turned evil. So they essentially, like, there was a misunderstanding in the situation and signed their own death warrant as traitors, even though they weren't. And for the final details of it, Luther didn't actually die. He was captured after being mortally wounded. And the Lion didn't actually disappear. He kind of fell into like a coma because of his injuries. And the Watchers in the Dark, these little Jawa-looking dudes, just dragged him away to like the deepest part of their fortress. And he's just been locked in there forever.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Oh, something.
Yeah. So that's the gist of how the heresy ends for these guys, right? As a quick rundown.
Yeah.
So the scattered remains of that like 10,000 troops that were on the planet when they got like cashed through the galaxy are referred to as the Fallen, right? Because they're meant to be fallen angels because they've turned traitor. And obviously, not all of them are traitors. Some of them are. Some of them are total twats. But some of them are good guys. Interestingly, there's one of them is actually one of the uncrowned princes from way back at, like, the Unification Wars. And the Lion, after reawakening, has met him, which is quite cool. So that guy is technically, like, the oldest living thing in the galaxy, other than possibly the Emperor, and I don't know if he's really alive anymore. Can you call it living?
Nobody knows. No,
Yeah.
like half, I guess.
Yeah. So, because this one Space Marine has been alive since, like, when the Emperor was first taken over Terra, he might be the oldest living human. Which is quite cool.
Yeah.
Although saying that, he did get cast through time, so I don't know if you deduct that time, or... I don't know what the rules are.
Who knows at this point?
You know what? I'll ask my missus, right? She's the physicist. She'll probably know. If anyone can decide, it's her or a philosopher. I don't know which.
But it's close.
It's in there somewhere. One of them will handle it for me. I'll ask her. If she doesn't know, I'll ask a philosopher. Someone will figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, the Fallen are a huge part of why the Dark Angels changed to the way they are. So, there is a title given to the Dark Angels, because they're a chapter now, and they're like successor chapters, so all the ones that came out of the original Legion. They are titled as the Unforgiven. So, the reason for this is that they all believe that they carry the sins of their Legion with them forever. It actually stems from the first chapter master of the Dark Angels, who made this big speech about how they won't forgive themselves until the last of the Fallen have been hunted down and brought to justice.
Yeah.
So they've now been titled as the Unforgiven, purely because they won't forgive themselves for the fact that a small percentage of the Legion turned traitor. Because you've got to remember that the Dark Angels that moved on from that point, that like didn't get scattered across the galaxy at Caliban or die in battle or anything there, they all were under the same impression that the Lion was, which is that the 10,000 troops on the planet had all turned traitor. So every fallen Marine that is ever found is treated as a traitor. Like, not one of them ever gets a fair say. They just get hunted down by their brothers and killed.
Yeah.
Which is horrendous. But both sides think it's bad for different reasons. So there's still this misunderstanding. Obviously, some of them are just traitors, and they do deserve to get gunned down because, obviously, because heresy.
Heretic.
Yeah. So, the chapter, I guess, or chapters, as they exist now, kind of only exist for two reasons. The first is to hunt down the Fallen, and the second is to bury the secrets of their past so that no one can know that at one time some of them did turn traitor. It's kind of like that, what's the saying, make God bleed and people will stop believing in him, right? As soon as you show weakness in something, it loses its, like, inspirational power, right?
Yeah.
So, if say the general populace were aware that the Dark Angels at one point had heretics in their numbers, the people wouldn't believe that they were who they claim they are, you know? They would be in doubt, and that would kind of ruin the Dark Angels' like ability to do what they're supposed to do. So there's that. I think the reality of the situation is that the Unforgiven can only actually be forgiven by the Lion. So I think it's going to be part of the Lion's return, is going to be convincing his sons that they didn't do anything wrong. Even if part of the Legion at one time did turn traitor, that's not a sin that you should bear. You know what I mean? I think that's going to be where that storyline goes. But at the moment, it's like the biggest part of who they are. They just do everything they can to hide the secrets of their past.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
so
that story will remain to be told.
Exactly, yeah. It's in the process at the moment. We're currently getting modern day Lion books. So, yeah.
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 And we will keep you updated.
Exactly. You're damn right we will. So, as it stands, the only people that actually know the truth about, like, who the Fallen really are and stuff like that are like the highest ranking members of the chapter. So the higher ranks you get, the deeper into the secrets you get. You get more access to the secrets of the Legion. So only like the highest ranking members, like the current Grand Master of the Dark Angels, knows about like the destruction of their home world, what happened to Luther, what happened to the Lion, who the Fallen really are, all this kind of stuff. All the rest of them just think that the Fallen are like a particular brand of heretic they want to kill. They don't even know that they're hunting down their own brothers. Like,
It's just sad.
It's secrets upon secrets. Like, it's never ending with these fucking guys nowadays. They've went full on insane, like, secret society. It's basically a cult at this point. I feel like one day an Inquisitor is going to look at these guys and go, these guys sound like heretics.
Hold on, wait a minute.
Exactly. So as I mentioned, this whole thing of like the Unforgiven stems from their first chapter master, Fareth Redloss. So when he was proclaimed chapter master, when he was titled chapter master, he proclaimed that the Sons of the Lion couldn't be redeemed of their sins until the last of the Fallen were hunted down. And it's just they've never got past it. I don't know if they've got I don't know how they keep track of how many they've found. Because
they don't. They just use it as an excuse.
Probably, yeah. It's either that or they painstakingly keep track of it. It's one or the other. They either don't do it at all or it's all they do.
Very systematically or nothing at all.
Yeah, it's definitely one or the other, and I don't know which. If anyone knows, let me know. I actually could fully imagine them, like, carving the names of the Fallen they've killed into a big wall somewhere. I could see that. That sounds like something they would do. It'd be cool, right? Okay, so there is another part to the Dark Angels that I wanted to mention, right? Because they're not just doing secret-y, murdery stuff about their own brothers or anything like that. They also have like a special hierarchy in their legion, because, you know, why not? So I thought we'd mention this because it's quite cool.
Yeah.
So I don't know if you'll remember what the Hexagrammaton was, but we mentioned it back at the start of the Lion episode. Essentially, you gotta remember that the Legion existed before they found the Lion on Caliban. So the Legion had its own hierarchy and strategy system and way of doing things. But the Lion's like knightly order on the homeworld had its own way of doing things. And they kind of got combined once the Lion came back to the Legion. Or was found by the Legion in the first place, I should say. And this is where the Hexagrammaton comes in. It's part of this organizational structure they ended up with. And it's entirely fallen away. It's no longer used, except for two parts that have stuck around, which are, I'll show you here, the Death Wing and the Raven Wing. These are their two logos, which are quite cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so these were originally two parts of the Hexagrammaton, and now they're the only two remaining parts of it. Because I believe the reason is primarily that you couldn't really use that organizational structure with a chapter that was Codex compliant. There was too few troops, I believe.
Yeah.
So, as it stands, for the record, the Dark Angels and all their successors are Codex compliant. They follow the rules about how you're allowed to have a chapter of Space Marines set up and stuff like that. But these two parts exist outside of that structure. They are not technically part of the correct hierarchy or structure, right? So the way it works is that the Death Wing, which is the one on the left there, is like their first company, right? The best of the best. And the Raven Wing is their second company, which are basically nigh on the best, but they specialize in like a particular type of attack, a particular type of warfare. That's the idea. So it allows them to have like an elite army that can focus on particular tasks outside of the typical chapter stuff. So the Dark Angels chapter can be going around doing actual chapter business, and these guys can still be prosecuting specialized campaigns, you might say, against, for example, the Fallen, without drawing the attention of the Inquisitors or anyone else like that, or any other chapters or anything. Because if anyone looks, the Dark Angels chapter is away doing what it's supposed to be doing. It just so happens there's these guys running around following the chapter's like secret business at the same time.
Yeah.
That's the idea. So we'll talk a little bit about the Deathwing first. So this is what Deathwing troops look like. Oh, see this little tiny green guy holding the giant sword on the far right?
Yeah.
That is one of the Watchers in the Dark. Those are the little Jawa motherfuckers that dragged the lion's body away. They just live on Caliban, and they just help the Order, and then moved on to helping the Dark Angels. But they're just like little secret mutant things. I don't think anyone really knows what they are properly. But they're like 3 feet tall, and they're such a cool concept. It's just funny. Anyway. Yeah. So this is what Deathwing troops typically look like. So the special thing about Deathwing troops is not only that they are considered the best of the best, right? To get promoted into the Deathwing, you have to be like of startling skill, right? And another thing, interestingly, they also all only wear Terminator armor. So these guys are all like walking tanks. So that's why they're all so bloody big and why their shoulders are so gigantic. Because they're all just in tanked out Terminator armor. Which is cool. Every single one of them wears this shit. So if the Deathwing come for you, you sure as hell better have a nuke ready. Because nothing short of it's going to take them down. Like, that is just a fact. These guys are armored to the teeth. Probably beyond that, actually, to be honest with you. Like, absolute behemoths is what they are. And you gotta remember, they're also...
It is just Warhammer, so...
It is, yeah. But beyond being incredibly well armored and well equipped, they're also just the best soldiers this legion has to offer. So if they come for you, you're probably gonna die, is the reality of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's gonna be a bad day regardless.
I think I had another picture of these guys. Oh, I have the organizational structure, but I don't think we really care about that. I don't know why I organized this. Oh yeah, this is the Deathwing's banner.
Okay, yeah.
Which is quite cool.
It looks like a rock concert poster.
It kind of does, yeah. Yeah. So we're gonna talk about. I'll mention this is what the Raven Wing look like. By the way.
Oh yeah.
So the Raven Wing are like a specialized force for like fast attacks. So a lot of the time they use bikes.
Keeping the rock and roll theme, huh?
Yeah, they really do. But these guys just ride around the battlefield, gunning down enemy troops left, right, and center at like the speed of light, basically, just flying around on jet bikes, murdering people. So you need something killed fast. These are the guys you call.
Who you gonna call?
So, by the way, these guys actually, if you remember, obviously, like I said, they were originally part of this like hexagrammaton thing, which came from back in the old days of Caliban. So they were originally based off of a mounted cavalry, which is why they use bikes so often, because they literally took like a bunch of guys from Caliban who were used to riding horses into combat and doing fast attacks, turned them into space marines, and then went, well, we don't have like space horses or anything, but we do have jet bikes. You're like, that'll do. So that's why the Raven Wing do this, because originally they were mounted cavalry troops. So to this day, they all just use jet bikes and just murder stuff really quickly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So of the two, of the Raven Wing and the Deathwing, the Deathwing being the first company is the most respected of the two, right? So to become a member of the Deathwing, like I said, you have to be the best of the best. I think you also have to be like put through a trial by like the head of the Librarius.
Yeah.
And then he has to like give the okay for you to join, because like he judges whether or not you're good enough. Yes, the Grand Master of the Librarius has to be like, yeah, okay, he's good enough. He can be part of it. He can join the team. But I think primarily the reason for that is like it's the librarius that has to do, because they're the psychers, obviously. Is because by joining the Deathwing, you are moving up ranks, and you are now in a place to join like the elite society of this chapter of this legion, and start to learn their secrets. So you have to be vetted beyond just skill to do this. So it's a big deal for these guys. This is where you get into all the secret society stuff within the Legion. So yeah, to become a member of the Deathwing, you have to be like, best of the best, and there has to be a spot available. You then get promoted after being judged by the Grandmaster Librarius, and then once you are a member, you will be given access to some of the chapter secrets. Not all of them. No, by no means do you get a small sliver of secret. You get like a pinch of secret. That's it. And then there is like one thing beyond this hierarchy-wise, and it's what's referred to as the inner circle. So these are the guys that are at like the top of the society that they have. Their secret society, if you will. To join the inner circle is a big deal, right? It's more of a rank thing than a skill thing, because it's basically just there to give you access to or to protect the secrets of the chapter. And the higher you rise within the inner circle, the more of these like rituals you have to complete, and the more secrets you get access to. It is total nonsense, but it's very secret society and quite gothic and cool in a way, I guess. The inner circle is essentially the Legion's like greatest heroes, right? Or currently living greatest heroes. But you can't. You can only become a member if you have served in the Deathwing, which is quite cool. Which is an odd detail as well. But you have to be like the best of the best to be considered to become one of this like higher ranking members in the inner circle and get the secrets, which is quite cool.
It only makes sense too.
Yeah. So I'm going to be honest with you, right? The Dark Angels are basically Space Knights Templar. That's all they are. To give you an idea,
it down real quick. Yeah.
To give you an idea of like who gets into the inner circle, right? Currently, the main members of the inner circle are the master of each of the Dark Angels companies, right? So obviously you get like first company, second company, all the way to like 10th. So the guy who runs each of them is currently a member of different ranks, right? And you also get the master of the Raven Wing and the master of the Deathwing.
Mm-hmm.
Then there is the Warden of the Rock. So I don't think I mentioned this, but obviously their planet was blown up. And the remains of it are just the fortress that they had, because the like warp storm was centered around that building, because that's where it's centered on Luther, basically, at the battle. That part was not entirely destroyed, so it's just like a Space Marine fortress hurtling through the galaxy on a meteor now. And because it's all like barren and desolate, because it was like, stripped of all atmosphere when the planet exploded, it is referred to as the Rock. And there's one guy who's set as like the defense commander for it. That is the Warden of the Rock. So that guy is part of the inner circle. There is the Master of the Interrogator Chaplains, the Grand Master of the Librarians, the Grand Master of the Chaplains, not the Interrogator ones, the normal ones, and the current Supreme Grand Master of the Dark Angels. These guys go hard with their titles, by the way. Supreme Grand Master. Like, alright, no bother, Azrael. Chill it. By the way,
very corporate, it sounds.
Yeah. For the record, though, the current Grand Master, or Supreme Grand Master of the chapter, is a guy called Azrael. So you know.
Okay.
Yeah. And yeah, it's really more of like a rank thing rather than a warrior ability. Although, because they're Space Marines, the two kind of go hand in hand. If you're going to become like the most well-renowned person in a legion, you're probably one of the best fighters, at least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what you're doing.
Yeah. So that gives you the bulk of the information you need about who they are nowadays. Very secretive, very murder the innocency, all that kind of stuff. Waste all the time hunting down fallen brothers that aren't really traitors a lot of the time. That kind of stuff. I do want to mention one more interesting thing about the Dark Angels, which I haven't told you before.
Yeah.
So, like I mentioned earlier, the Dark Angels were out in the galaxy doing stuff before the other legions were, right? And as such, as being the first and, needing all this new equipment that the Emperor didn't know the Marines would need to deal with all these new threats, they got access to a bunch of technology that had been, found from the Dark Age of technology that none of the other legions got access to. And they just never shared it. So to this day, they have access to all this crazy tech that none of the other legions do. My personal favorite is a stasis grenade.
Stasis grenade?
Yeah, when it goes off, the blast area of it gets held within time for up to 1,000 years.
Oh.
Yeah. Which is cool as shit. That actually comes up weirdly. It doesn't, the reason I'm mentioning this, because it's a good example, but it's not even an example from a Dark Angels book, it's an example from a Space Wolves book. The, current Space Wolves equivalent of Loki finds, the remnants of a stasis grenade that a Dark Angel used on a battlefield that he was on that didn't go off. It was a dud, or it broke before it went off. And he takes it to, one of their engineers and is like, fix it, make it work, I want this thing. And the guy manages to get it fixed and gives it to him. And, I believe he does this after this guy gets one of his hearts ripped out. So a Drukari rips his heart out. So he has the missing heart replaced with the stasis grenade. So if he dies, it'll just go off. This guy then ends up back on Prospero, the homeworld of 1,000 Suns, and ends up face to face with Magnus. And Magnus threatens to just kill him to get what he wants, because the guy has something that Magnus wants. And the guy is like, oh, you can't do that, because then the stasis grenade in my chest will go off, and we'll both be stuck here for 1,000 years. And Magnus is like, why would I give a shit? I'll just wait. 1,000 years is nothing. He's like, yeah, but then your plan might not work. You need this shit now for your plan to work. So then he manages to, bargain, again, or negotiate with a demon Primarch, and win.
That's not everybody who could do that.
Nah, it's one living Space Marine has done this, and it's this guy. So yeah, stasis grenades, man, and this is something that Dark Angels just have access to. But this is the kind of shit they have, shit that no other Legion even can conceive of existing. Also, for the record, the Mechanicum would kill every single one of them if they found out they had this shit, because it is heresy top to bottom to have this stuff. So I think that's everything I wanted to mention about the Dark Angels. I think that gets you pretty up to speed. When we talk about them, you're going to see a lot of secret society stuff, a lot of hunting their own brothers from the long distant past, a lot of people out of space and time, and a lot of weapons you didn't know existed or could exist. So yeah, I think we could talk about them in the modern day without you being too surprised by what was going on in the general concept of things,
Yeah.
So would you like to round us out?
Sure can do. Well, thank you guys for listening to this episode of Iterators of the Imperium. It's been me, Miss, and of course, Ryan. And we will see you next time. Take care. And peace.
Bye.